Know you've been a good friend, and that's in the thick and thin, and I know it's never gonna end, 'cause you've been a good friend.
Welcome to our first podcast, Reseller Evolution. And my name is Scott, and I'm here with
Carl.
Carl, why are we here today?
And we wanted to share our experiences in the reselling world with like-minded people.
With our first episode, we're going to talk about 2023 experiences that we've had. Anything you want to add to that, Carl?
Yeah, our experiences in the last year. And we also want to talk about what we expect the reselling world is going to go like in 2024 and maybe some of our personal goals.
Before I start breaking down 2023, I just want to say overall, 2023 has been fantastic for me, both on eBay and the growth that I've experienced there, as well as the booth. What about you, Carl?
For 2023, I found that the pandemic boost has worn off a little bit for my eBay sales, but also I've expanded physically selling things here in Ottawa in a booth, which has been a really enjoyable experience. Also, I've started to post listings to Etsy.
All right, so let's break down 2023 in a couple categories here. First, we'll start with eBay. You've been doing eBay a lot longer than myself, Carl, so you're going to have more experiences that way. But at the same time, you're going to have a different aspect of growth where my store is new, so it has really nowhere to go but up. It's either going to go sideways or it's going to go up. So you probably got a better idea of the ups and downs of eBay. What do you think?
Well, I think, I have about 4 or 5 years experience now selling on eBay from pretty well nothing. And we had such a huge pandemic boost in 2022 and 2021. I think a lot of people in the reselling world got used to that. And one common theme I've heard this year is the slowdown of online sales. So if you're coming from, for me at least, I'm down 50%, honestly, on eBay from the previous years. And we've also had an introduction of quite a few new ways of selling. The big one on eBay, of course, is promotions. And also, I think the market has changed in terms of what was easy to sell before isn't quite as easy now, maybe. And also, I think there's a bit more competition. Not to be negative, I think there's so many positive things that are happening as well.
Yeah,
but
I personally don't mind the competition as long as they're representing eBay properly. You know what I mean? And I like watching other YouTubers out there because, for most part, like I like Lonnie and Candace because I like Lonnie sometimes when he teaches people how to package properly, how to box things properly, and
And what channel is that from again? That's from
Shed Flips.
Shed Flips, right? Yeah. For me, a lot of the stuff that I think about is how to be more efficient in my listing and how to be have less errors, have less returns, and that stuff. And that's the sort of thing we all kind of evolve in over time. I remember the first time I shipped out something, I think I used garbage bags as padding, that sort of thing, Okay. And part of the evolution, like the title of the podcast, is learning how to do things a little bit better. I think every year we get a little bit better. We all make mistakes, of course. I think as long as the trend is going up, then we're okay.
And I think you made a good point by bringing up the title. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the title because it is our first podcast. The title Evolution, Reseller Evolution. It's because we're always learning. It doesn't matter if you're a Craigslist hunter, which has been doing this for years. I'm sure he's still learning too, right?
100%.
And we have new things to learn from. eBay itself is part of an evolution, and now we're bringing promoted listings. AI seems to be the next big thing coming forward. List perfectly, which allows us to cross list from one. Well, we can cross list from list perfectly itself and branch out, or we can. What I do is I put my listings on eBay and then I cross list it within 30 seconds. It's just a few clicks.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And then I take it right to Etsy. I mean, for people just coming and listening to this that might have not know who we were or are, we also have a little bit differences in what we sell as well, which can
100%.
affect how we do things. Like I can't really go on Poshmark. I can't go on other platforms. Etsy and eBay are my two main things online that is, because I deal with mostly the older antique vintage stuff, some collectible stuff. What about you, Carl?
Yeah, well, you also come from like the perspective of and having an antique market booth and able to sell that stuff. Where I've always had to ship things online, and when you're shipping things online, you can't do. It's much more difficult to do the larger stuff. So my perspective has always been more of a mix. I like the vintage stuff as well, but honestly, I will sell brand new items as new in box. I have no problem with that as well. Whatever makes me a good profit, I'm willing to do.
Yeah, and I've dabbled a little bit into the newer stuff for sure. But that's because listen to the guys like yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
other YouTubers, but uh, I've learned a lot from you and Adam. We know who Adam is. A lot of listeners might not know who Adam is, but I learned a lot from him.
When
And
shipping vintage, yeah.
yeah, shipping vintage. And just other people I could name drop a bunch, but basically it's are part of an evolution. You're coming out of the water as a little amoeba, and you're starting to grow
Yeah.
legs and a head and a brain,
Uh,
and then you evolutionize, I guess you'd call. Um, but
right, and I
and I
think
think you have to adjust, because if you stick to one thing,
yeah,
you're going to be left behind. I think you
no,
got to constantly adjust, and not only because you're left behind, maybe because people are interested in that, but I think other people jump on that bandwagon and flood the market.
yeah, the market changes for sure, and I think what I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well, is that sometimes what happens, especially with people in the antiques market, is they get stuck in a certain time period. We've all seen those booths where things haven't really changed in a long time, or you have the sellers trying to sell stuff that sold 30 or 40 years ago. And I think, that happens to all of us. And part of what we want to talk about in the podcast is how to keep more on top of that. So we are taking advantage of all the new tech, but at the same time, keeping an eye out on what's worth our time, what basically is bringing in returns for our time. I think it's
Yeah,
really important too.
and it's neat how we talk about our show is about reseller evolution, but we're talking about the past in 2023.
Yeah.
But to go forward, evolution. I'll keep using that word here
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
but I think you have to kind of learn from the past in order to change properly for the future. So I think the title, I mean, I know we took a little bit of time to come up with this title, but I think it's a perfect title. I think it describes what resellers have to do
Yeah.
to survive and to keep moving, right? So
Yeah. And to form a sense of community, because we're all in the same ball game here and we all make the same mistakes. And hopefully we'll be able to add a few things that maybe you as the audience haven't thought about adding to your business, or maybe a different aspect that just didn't occur to you.
all right, so let's pull back a little bit to our eBay experiences. Um, Now, I had mentioned earlier where you've been doing eBay a lot longer. I've been on it for just about 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So my growth is going to be is going to be different, and I would say growth wise, and when I say growth, basically I'm also growing the amount of items I have on there. I'm between 516 listings. My goal is to get into around 2,000, 2,500 listings. I got lots of inventory for that, but that's another topic. So my sales growth is obviously going to be better because my listing growth has improved, right? I know I know people are going to talk about, well, it's also about quality and all this kind of stuff, not just quantity, but
Right.
I do watch for my quality as well. I and we'll get into that a little bit later on, but I also have an antique booth, which I've been doing for 8 years. So I can put my lower end product there. So going just on eBay right now,
Yeah.
my bottom stuff I list is at the $30. I don't really
That's
list
awesome.
for a little bit. There you might go and find 10 items on my store that is in the $24 range. Those are probably stuff that I listed when I first started, and I've kind of just cut back a little bit on them. But for the most part, I keep the $30 or above as my listing goal. So anyways, I don't want to ramble on too much about that. So my sales in my experiences have been better, but they're for for certain reasons that I just mentioned.
So my sales over the last year have decreased about 50% in terms of value. But part of that is understandable because one, I had less time to go out and source, but also I think the market has changed a bit for me and in the stuff I've sold. I think what happens if we're not careful is when you first start, you put in so much new stuff, and new stuff always sells so much better than your older stuff. And I think what one trap I fell into a bit in 2023 is as the new stuff in my store sold, the amount of stuff that isn't quite as good has been taking up more and more of what I have online. And I think I fell into that trap a little bit this year where I actually maybe I should clear it out because my average sale is much lower than yours. And I honestly think that having a higher average sale, especially from where we are, is very important because our here in Canada, our shipping costs are so much higher as a portion of our expenses that we have to be careful on our average selling price.
Right, right. Now, I mean, that's a whole evolution type topic that we'll probably get into when we get into 2024, is when we deal with shipping and different things like that. Because there's a lot that could be a whole show on itself for sure. But it is much more expensive, and that also does hurt our bottom line for sure. I have strategies. I'll share that going into 2024 with that. So my average listing price throughout the year, at one point I had a month where it was like $140 average listing price, but it kind of hovered around between 85 and probably 125 in between there. I think the last time I looked, it had dropped a little bit. I sold a ton of items for like I'm assuming for Christmas, let's say fourth quarter, in the kind of like 35 to $65 range. So that brought my average down a bit. Not that I'm complaining, because a lot of those things are really cool items. You know what I mean? And they just don't, they hold the collector, the collectors love them, but there's only so much you can charge for them, right? Like, for instance, those vintage brochures, I'm pretty sure I mentioned them to you. They're from the 20s and 30s. It's just a folded piece of paper, but the 20s, and it'll talk about resorts and different things that you can travel to. $35 to $65 is like, I'm not going to get $200 for a brochure. You know what I mean? But I got so many of them for so cheap that they're completely worth it. They're easy to list, right?
It's awesome when you can get those big bulk buys and there's demand for it. I think, that's one aspect for 2023 that I've learned a bit about is not just how much things sell for, but how much demand there is for it. And sometimes you don't know. And sometimes you have to take those risks. Like you didn't know with those brochures that they would sell for that much. And your gut kind of told you that it was worth picking up. And that's something you develop as well over time. So my average sales price in 2023 was $50.87. And that's actually about 10% down from the previous year. And that's definitely a trend I don't want. I find for me, I get a lot more excited with higher value sales. It depends, of course, on the amount of work. If it's something new and it's all sealed, I can get it out of the door really quick. I don't mind the lower average sales price. But for the stuff I think I want to be going into is higher than that. So one of the things I wanted to do this year is actually stop listing some of that lower value stuff, especially the stuff that there's a lot of demand for, because sure, it feels good when you see your listing numbers go up. But I think that is an easy mistake to make, is if you're getting your numbers higher, but your overall value of your store is lower, then that actually can hurt you. And I think when I checked my overall value of my store, it actually decreased a lot in the last year. So it's not just the market has been slower in 2023 for me, but also the amount of stuff I have in my store in terms of overall values decreased a lot. And that's something I want to reverse. And, in my circumstances now, I'm going to have more time. So hopefully I'll be able to reverse that.
Well, I think we got to let the audience know too, Carl. You were working full time at like last year.
Yeah.
Now, Congratulations, Carl. But
Thank you.
you've gone into retirement. So
Great. So I could be
now
one of those annoying guys who you see who could take your lower value stuff. No, I'm just kidding. No. I can have more time to think about this and think of it more like a business and have less
well, I'm
distractions as
thinking you have
well.
more time to go out and source the bigger ticket items. Because if you're okay, so most of your sourcing while you were working came from thrift stores.
Thrift stores, exactly.
So
Yeah.
if you went to a thrift store and you see $10 profit hanging on the wall, you kind of take it because you're working and
And
that's
you're
fine.
there. You're
But if
there.
you're
Yeah.
out sourcing and you start going, outside of that area or and start hitting maybe, I don't know, more auctions, estate sales, different things, we can get into that. That's going to be topics for the future.
Yeah.
But that type of sourcing differently, because now you're going to have the ability to do that because you got all sorts of time on your hands. That ability is going to help you in the long run maintain that higher average item that you list.
Yeah, I think
But
everyone has to look at their circumstances. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the same boat, so to speak. And I think when we compare ourselves sometimes to other people, it can be a little distracting. But you have to take that into account too. And so, yeah, overall, I'm not. In fact, the year before, I actually had more time, and that's probably why my sales were better in 2022 as well.
okay.
I think so. So for this year, is there anything that you added to your repertoire in terms of reselling that you think is helping?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. First of all, cross listing.
Yes.
I've started cross listing probably early October, maybe late September. Hear a lot of people talking about it. And honestly, I was against cross listing. I was kind of like, oh my God, this is just a can of worms.
Yeah.
I'm going to lose items, get them all mixed up, whatever. But honestly, it's pretty easy. Now, I use List Perfectly. I may be changing that because I think it's a little bit more expensive
Yeah.
for what I use it for. I'm on 2 platforms. I have no interest in right now anyway, but I have no interest in going to other than eBay and Etsy because of the type of items I sell. I post my stuff on eBay and I selectively grab certain items and cross list them into Etsy. It's very quick, but it's certain items that work on Etsy. Not everything will work on Etsy. But anyways, that was a big game changer for me. What about you?
Oh, for me, the same. I've been using Process Magic, and for people who don't know, what this allows you to do is you make a listing on one site, it copies almost all the information to another site. So for me, it's Etsy. So I had always had an Etsy store, but I never took the time to bother putting stuff up. But I think I had the same worries as you did, which is that I'm going to lose track of stuff. But honestly, I think it's almost a no-brainer, and the cost is, at least with Crossless Magic, is about $10 a month, and I think that will pay you back very quick, because if you can put it on 2 platforms, it's good. And so I started doing that just in the last month. So far, it's been very easy. I don't think there's any reason not to do it, unless it depends, of course, on the stuff you're selling. Because on Etsy, for example, things should be vintage. But that is definitely one tool I've added, and I will be doing a lot more of that. But also going through all my old listings, and not just doing new listings on Etsy, but going through my old listings on eBay and maybe looking and seeing what goes on there. So that's a really powerful tool that we've had.
I'm really liking the AI description that eBay provides.
It's
Um,
interesting, isn't it?
it is, and I've only been using that probably for the last couple of weeks now. But I mean, sometimes you got to go in and change things. But I find it really gives a bit of a sales pitch to your item,
It
whether
does.
people are reading it or not. Sometimes I don't think they look at all the pictures, let alone go down and read everything.
No, I tried it. Like, I see the appeal. I'm not very verbose, anyways, when it comes to my descriptions. Basically, I copy and paste the description of the item in terms of like what it is, like in terms of like if there's damage or whatever, and that's it. I never put anything else. And I tried the AI thing, and it's just like it made a beautiful paragraph or two of how wonderful my item was, but it didn't. I don't know. I think it's just AI is a very interesting tool. I think all of us probably use Google Lens, which is kind of like AI in a way, and that will continue to develop. Like for me, it's not quite there yet, uh, but it is free. Can't
Yeah,
beat free, right?
it's free for sure. And I still put in the so if you go to the seller description, I still put my regular piece, which is
Right.
usually 1 or 2 lines, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I put in, please refer to the provided photos for details, and please feel free to ask questions regarding this listing. Those are always going to be in all my listings. But I just want to read here, Carl. This is
Yeah.
a vintage brochure. I just posted it. Now, I could never write this well. Okay. So I'll read it. I'll try to be quick here, but it's a
Yeah.
couple lines here. Vintage travel brochure, seeing California by motor transit stages. This brochure is a perfect souvenir for anyone who loves to travel or is interested in California's history. Produced in the United States, this brochure provides a glimpse into what it was like to travel by motor transit stages in the early 20th century. The brochure features stunning photos, maps, and detailed descriptions of the various routes and destinations throughout California. It is a great addition to any collection of travel memorabilia or collectibles. Don't miss out on this opportunity to own a piece of history and add the vintage travel brochure to
Oh,
your
wow.
collection today.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Isn't
It's
that
always
amazing?
accurate. It's always
Right?
accurate, you know? You never quite sure. Like, the thing with AI, I find is so confident.
Yes,
It sounds so good. So
and
you have
I'm
to
like,
make sure.
if these people read this, they're gonna
Yeah.
have. They feel they got to have that brochure.
I want to buy it now. Yeah, no, and that was definitely a great tool they added in 2023. Part of it too is the fear of the new, right? For me, right? And just sometimes you just want to try things and see how it goes. But yeah, hey, 2023 was good. I have no complaints really. I'm looking forward to 2024.
Carl, one thing I know you did, and
Yeah.
I was so proud of you for doing this because you were on the
Thank you,
fence.
Scotty.
I know,
Yeah.
I know Harry Humstone. You can check out his YouTube channel. I know Harry's on the fence too, and I
Yeah.
think it's something he's going to lean towards possibly doing it when he retires. But it's on the fence, and it's all about the up expense for this. This is the problem
Yes.
that people
Yeah.
fear the most.
Hmm.
But I have a brick and mortar setup. I have 2 booths, a very large booth in an antique mall and a small antique booth, and I'm opening up a third booth, but
Wow.
it's going to be large, and
Yeah.
that starts January 1st. I've been doing that 8 years. That's where I got my start. I can't ask for better mentors than the guys that I have met in doing this, right? And it's a whole different mindset when you have to pay money up front in the
Yeah.
form of rent. They also
Yeah.
take commissions off, but it's a
Yeah.
whole different aspect. So, anyways, so that's where my 8 years of reselling has, through evolution, has evolved itself
Yeah.
into 2 years of eBay, Etsy,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So, you've also started dabbling in the brick and mortar concept, and
Well,
I know it's a little bit different
yeah.
style of it's more nostalgic, but what's your experiences on that for
Well,
2023?
after hearing you talk about it for a few years now, it's like, okay, I wanted to try this different aspect of it. And it's not necessarily the same market. Or that was my perception. I wanted to try that. I wanted to see, well, maybe there's things that make more sense online, but also there's things that make more sense in the booth. And what I was scared of is the commitment because not the financial commitment necessarily, but also there's a time commitment there. But I think, one thing I've learned in life is sometimes you just have to experience it. And so what I did is I took I basically have a bookcase really at a place called the Nostalgia Warehouse here in Ottawa. And I pay a relatively low fee for that. And just like what you just mentioned, there's a commission on top of that. And I just wanted to try it. And for me, it's been very interesting because what I wanted to try was sometimes when you have items that have a lower value, it doesn't necessarily make sense to sell them online. But they have enough value that you just don't want to donate them or put them in a garage sale or something. And I felt I was missing out on that chunk of the market. So this year I tried it and I decided to put stuff in there.
But I have a bit of an addition to why I like the booth, and I like the
Mm.
booth is because, and it's I mean, between the two of them, I mean, there's a lot of square footage there. So it is a time commitment. You have to take stuff back there. But I also like it because it allows me to source differently.
Mm.
I source with confidence because if I'm not stuck taking something back because it's $15. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though it's collectible, it's not worth my time on eBay in my mind. So what I can do is I can put it in the booth. For instance, to buy bottle openers for beer advertisements or
Yeah.
things, like a lot of them are $10, $12, and I
Yeah.
don't want to be sitting there putting them online for $10 or $12. But
And the excellent,
if I can get a whole box of them for
yeah.
$5,
Yeah.
I'm throwing them in the booth. You know what I mean? All
And
sorts of things. Stuff with little chips. Okay, I didn't see that chip when I bought it.
yeah.
Well, I can put it in the booth because people are going to see that. I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining it to someone
Yeah.
who's not reading this thing anyways. And
No.
when they get it, they're
Then
upset because they got a
they're
chipped
upset.
item. You know what I mean? So the
And
booth provides me the ability to source with confidence.
and like for your example with the bottle openers, what you can do is you can cherry pick the best to put online.
100%.
Right?
100%. I have
So
a story there too.
yeah, exactly. Like if you have something that sells for the $150 to $100, well, maybe that customer will not walk into your physical store anytime soon. But online, yeah, sure. There's people who want that higher end stuff. So you can do a bit of both.
Yeah, and I do put higher end there too. Like anybody listening from the store, I don't just put garbage there. I put like
No, I'm not saying that. No, no.
I sold things for $800 and
Yes.
$500.
Yeah.
Some were too big to put online, and some were very possible to put online. But I just want to talk about that bottle opener thing because
Yeah.
that was a great. So because I could source with confidence, I bought the whole box, not
Yeah.
knowing exactly what was in there. It's just bottle openers. People collect them, right? So I'm thinking 10, 12.90 or 12.95 a piece, whatever. In that box was a bottle opener Gucci. It had
Wow.
it stamped
Yeah.
in it and everything.
Yeah.
And I sold that for about, I think I listed it for 150 and then 125. And I sold it for around $100.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, bam.
Online or in the store?
No, that was online.
That was
So I
online.
sold that one
Yeah.
bottle opener online and everything else went in the booth.
Yeah.
And I got, I don't know, probably in that particular case, they were pretty generic, but I think I put like $5 or $6 on each of them, right? But there was like, I don't know, 30, 50 bottle openers, right? So, but in
Yeah.
that was that Gucci one. So,
Yeah.
it without the booth, I probably wouldn't have bought that.
No, or you'd have to donate it because it's not worth it. Like no one's going to pay $5 online and then $15, $12 for shipping.
Right. I
And
could have
that,
locked them up and stuff like that, but then it's more difficult because a
yeah,
lot of beer guys are going to be for one brand and they don't need 15 Labatt bottle openers. They're going to want one.
no,
Right.
yeah.
So, and if I put other brands as a mix, they're not going to buy it because they only want the Labatt one. So it was a little bit.
That's the nice thing about having the booth too is you don't have to lot up because, like for example, if I was selling Fisher Price figures, I'm gonna put them in lots of 10 or 20 because individually they're not worth it as much, or
Right.
especially online. But in the booth, I can put them and say each one's $3 or even a bit more than I would honestly get per item lotted online because people will take exactly what they want. It's also so much faster, honestly, just putting things in a booth than having to take pictures of each one, ID it, description, dealing
And
with the
then ship
questions
it.
to get online, shipping, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So for overall, it's been for this year for a new experience for me. It's been really good. I can't see myself stopping. I
Okay.
can
What
see
is
myself. Go
what's
ahead.
your evolution on that, Carl?
Well, I got evolution. Well,
Evolution. I had to throw that.
the bookcase has been great because it gave me a taste at a low cost. But there's not a lot of room in a bookcase, and I think the evolution would probably be to go to a bigger size. Because ironically, even though the cost for that bookcase is less than it would be for a booth, it's hard to have a good return because you have more stuff that you would love to put out for sale, but you can't because you're physically restricted. And with the bigger booth, yeah, it's an overall bigger cost, but your cost per like square footage is much lower.
Right. 100%. 100%. A lot of smaller booths don't last, to be honest with you, in my experience,
Yeah,
because they just don't have enough items to appeal to people walking by. So you might have a
yeah,
lot of people walking by, but if you only got 10 items, you're going to only appeal to 10 people. You know what I mean? But if you got
exactly.
like that's on a good day. But if you got like thousands of items, honestly, between small ones and big ones. But let's say you got 500 items. Now you can appeal to a different amount of people, and the amount you're not paying. So you're what are you paying for that one? The one showcase, like, what are you paying for that? Like, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but
Yeah, I have no problem telling that. Like I pay $65 and I pay 10% commission on my items.
so if you were to do a booth where you could fit 10 of those in there, you're probably paying $200
Yeah,
or $300,
yeah,
but you can fit like $600 worth of booth space. Like, you know what I mean? So you're
exactly.
cutting your rental costs in half by expanding and making it bigger.
And you can put, like you just said, I'm so restricted by space that I'm spending a lot of time taking stuff in and out,
Right.
hoping that to keep my little booth fresh. Just the hope. But when I do that, you need to have time for people to walk through the store. It's not like people are going in every week, right? So I'm probably missing out on sales by taking stuff in and out. Where if I had a bigger booth, I could keep all that quality stuff out on the general shelves for longer, and I can afford to wait for that customer to walk
100%.
by,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe that might be coming for 2024. I don't know. We'll see.
What let's talk about a little bit of 2024. Like, I mean, I can't believe it's 2024. I think we're supposed to have, like, be on the moon or Mars or something like that, you
So
know?
crazy, so quick. You know,
but,
it's going to be a
but
big adjustment, won't it? Like for me, I'm retired. So I'm gonna have the option of going out and doing as much as I want. Now, I'm not gonna go gung ho and like I need to see the numbers increase every month and I need to like sell more and more and like hustle, hustle, hustle. But at the same time, I do want to grow my business because it's so enjoyable. And for me, it's thinking of ways to actually improve the business is kind of part of the fun.
it absolutely is part of the fun. 100%. I agree. Um, yeah. So I mean, well, before I get into goals, I talk about, like, maybe what I'm seeing for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your view is going to be different than mine because you've been doing this a lot longer. Um, you're kind of a numbers guy, where I'm kind of like a hack that just worked in a factory and
Whatever,
is
man. Your
like
numbers are
learning all
so
this
good.
stuff. Just,
Yeah,
but
quit tricking me.
what I think is, I think
Yeah.
AI is going to be a big game changer for
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, for eBay. Like, I'm not saying it's going to come in 2024, but I would love it where I can take a what can I use an example, like a coffee mug, something simple like that. But you can take an item, you can put it. You know how they have those light boxes
Yeah.
that you can put items in, and it takes all the light, and there's no shadows, and you take a picture. Well, what if they had little cameras in those light boxes, or you can install cameras or something? It's strictly and maybe a reseller thing, but
Yeah.
it's got the light and the cameras. You set that in there. You click a button, it takes all the pictures, and it
Yeah.
lists it right then and there. Goes to eBay, and all you do is kind of reread everything, make sure everything's right, put in your
Yeah.
price, and it's gone. It's done.
Oh, I
Like,
can see that happening. I can see there being resistance to that as well, as people
really?
are scared. Well, people get scared when there's change, right? Or even Google Lens has been such a game changer for just IDing stuff. But you're right. Like in 2024, all that AI stuff is just going to get better and better.
So we'll see where that goes. But I think that's one thing. I'm gonna go back in time and still stick with brick and mortar because I really like that, and I think there's gonna be people out there who want to touch it, hold it, see
Oh
what they're
yeah,
getting,
100%. Yeah.
and that kind of thing too. But I'm expanding my booth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting another one January 1st of
Yep.
2024. So I'm expanding as you are, and I know, to me, eBay, I didn't want to talk to goals right away, but I'm gonna assume, regardless of what happens in society and I really
Yeah.
feel that the growth is going to come 2, 3, 4 times what I'm doing now, and I'll explain that based on my goals when we get there. But what about
Right.
you? What do you see?
Oh, I think the big question I hear a lot of people talking about is the economy, but we don't really have any control over that. I think if you're putting up good stuff, if you're putting up quality stuff, it's going to sell. And I think that's not going to change in 2024. And I think for me, one of the big goals is diversification. I think I love eBay. eBay has been great to me, but I think looking at where I'm selling is actually going to be more important as the future goes. eBay's been great, but it's also had a lot of issues that we've heard over and over again on the website. So I think it's just smart to diversify. So for me, 2024 is going to be like doing a lot more Etsy. I might do Facebook Marketplace. I haven't decided. It's not my favorite platform, but that seems to be kind of a great place not only to sell but also to source. I want to make sure I can do that. There's also been a lot of change already when it comes to how I'm sourcing from the thrift stores. And not to be negative, but there's more competition out there. And a lot of the stores have increased their prices. So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna jump in there. That's one of the things I think, we do have differences maybe in politics or different things like that. But one of the things at the end of the day, Carl, and I think this is why we get along so well.
Yeah.
We aren't the sky is falling type of guys.
No.
We're positive and we're looking forward to new challenges and new things. And I think that energy that we kind of have, I think that's why we get along so well, because we can kind of see positivity in the future.
I prefer positively. Like for me, all the stuff I was talking about is like, those are things to be aware of, but they're not, a lot of those things are out of control. Right. But what we can control is our knowledge, where we're spending our time, making sure that we're listing what we're buying, which is the big thing for me. Right. We do have control over that. And the most beautiful thing about all of this is it's up to us as individuals, whether or not we do it. There's no one else telling me you need to do this. There's no one else telling me how to spend my time. And that freedom you get from that is huge. So addictive.
And it's huge. It's like life changing.
It keeps me excited. It keeps me excited for 2024.
And I think you gotta kind of not listen to all the negative banter that's out there, because there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And roll with the punches and just prepare. Like you're preparing. You said eBay's been fantastic, wonderful, all this kind of stuff. And it has, but it's also susceptible to unforeseen circumstances. And by diversifying into brick and mortar or Facebook Marketplace or Etsy or whatever, like to have different, like put it this way, Etsy, when the banks collapsed, all their money was tied up in the banks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it turned out okay. I haven't heard any disaster stories, but it could have been really bad.
Oh, it created a hiccup. If you were expecting that check that day, that was a problem.
For sure. So I think you can't be fearful of that, but you also have to say, how do I protect myself a little bit from that? Because you're not going to be fully protected. That's for sure.
No, and that's what diversification is for. And that fear that we all had, that first item we put up for sale, whether that was in the booth, or the first item you put up for sale and you got that cha-ching, and you're like, oh my God, now I actually have to ship that. Like that fear is always going to be there. And that fear is always, it's not like you get over that fear from once you've done it. But I think when we're learning and growing, that fear is also a sign that this is a good thing.
This is a good
thing. As hard as that is.
Yeah.
Because that's how you expand.
I'll be honest with you. There's still items that I fear, but I've learned how to get over that fear and push past that fear, but I still get nervous. Like,
100%.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm I'll check it's been 5 days. That person hasn't given me a negative yet, or they haven't wanted to return it when I thought for sure they're going to want it. They're going to scam me. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So, so there's always that fear. All right, bud. I think, probably coming to the conclusion of the show, I think we pretty much talked about everything. And I'm really happy the way the first show went. I think there's a lot of good content here. I think we really touched on everything.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that, Carl? Like, do you feel we did a good show for the first time?
I hope so. I hope it's entertaining for people. I hope it's informative.
I'd
Give
like
us
to
a
hear you
chance.
guys.
Give us a chance. We smooth things out over time. But
Yeah, and I appreciate any type of feedback. We're going to post this
100%. Yeah.
on podcast, so you can get that. I think it's Spotify. We'll have to figure that one out. That's coming, but we're definitely going to be on a YouTube, and you'll just look for Reseller Evolution. And so, Carl, I think the best way to end it here is, what are your goals going into 2024?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this podcast is really starting in 2024. We decided to do one in 2023 just to kind of summarize the year,
Yeah.
our goals, let people know we're out there and we're coming. What is your goal for 2024?
Well, 2024, I want to be more efficient. That's one of my things. And I think when we're in this business, we're not keeping track of all our time. But for me, what I want to do is, I sometimes get jealous of all your amazing bulk buyers, to be honest. And I want to spend more time figuring out your little secrets there, because I can spend a lot of time going to thrift stores, and which is great. I love meeting the people. I have friends there and everything. It's not the most efficient way to source. So I want to get a little better at my sourcing. Of course, I want to expand my knowledge, but that is a forever thing, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, it's sourcing. So sourcing. We'll have to definitely do a topic on sourcing.
yes,
That'll be our goal as we go into our evolution of
exactly.
So,
So for 2024, yeah, that like efficiency. Like, I can say numbers. I can say what I want to accomplish. I want to net this amount per month and stuff like that. But for me, it's about the processes. Always getting a little better at those processes, wasting less time. I know that's not a hard goal, but if I wanted to say, okay, I want to make $2,000 a month, I already know what I need to do. I need to sell $4,000 a month, because my net is around 50%. And I already know what my average item is. So I know how many items I need to list, which is all great. You can write and say all those numbers, and that's what everyone does with their goals, and it feels good. But for me, I want to work on my processes and my habits, because I think it'll be a little better. And throughout the show, we'll probably be talking about stuff like that, of how to be just a little bit better, how to do garage sales a little better, how to form professional connections with other sellers. What are yours? What are your goals for 2024?
Goals. Well, I think I'm always trying to improve on picking better items and not feel I have to grab every dollar that's available, because sometimes an item can have profit, but the time suck from that, trying to grab that little bit of profit, isn't worth missing out on something that has more profit. So I know I'm like profit, but anyway, I hope that sounded correct. I mean,
I understand what you're saying. Sometimes it's better to come home with nothing than it is to come home with garbage.
Right.
And we all get that occasionally, where it's like, I need to buy something. I've come all this way.
Well, it's not even about something. So
No.
because I'm always getting stuff. Like, I'm always, like, for instance, if I go to a live auction, so they have a lot of $5 trays.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't need all the $5 trays because nobody's bidding on them. I might look at the tray, and it's so tough. It's so tough because there's stuff I don't know. Like I'm always I'll always call myself, I'm a hack reseller, because I will buy stuff on the cheap and learn about it. You know what I mean?
It's
you're
a
kind of
gamble. There's a
hacking
bit of a
away at
gamble there, yeah. And sometimes that gamble really pays off, and
it
sometimes it
really
doesn't.
pays off. And with the booth, it always pays off, because I can put that stuff in the booth. So maybe I need to tone that down a little bit, not give up on it completely, but kind of really check out. I mean, it's hard to say, because those are both one contradicts my other one, and my other one contradicts this one. So, but I just think the space that's here, I have to be a little more careful. So that being said, my other goal is to clear out the space here, because I have tons of inventory and it's too much. Like the garage, if I had that empty, my goal is to make that into a processing area. And then I have 2 rooms that are full. And if those are a little bit more empty, I can use them for something more manageable, more efficiently. You know what I mean? So be more
That's
efficient.
talking about the processes I was saying for me as well, right? Like I think all resellers have that issue of if you're not careful, it becomes a bit of hoarding.
Yeah,
Or
but
I wouldn't say hoarding, that's not fair, but I would say excess inventory that hasn't been listed is
yeah,
something a lot of us deal with.
but the problem is
Yeah.
sometimes like my booth goes through a lot of product.
Mm.
Now, it's not the 75 to 100 item profit per item or value per item that I put in there. There's a lot of small stuff. But I need to fill that back up because if I'm paying rent on something, I got to make sure I have inventory to put that in there. So my
Right.
little bit of fear would be to make sure I have inventory and not run out. So far, I have no problem. I'm actually turning inventory away right now. However, I'm opening up a new booth, so a lot of this stuff is going to go to that booth, right?
Yeah.
But then I have to justify, oh, sure, I could open 10 booths and then clear out this entire house. But then, and this is where the contradiction, your mind is,
Yeah.
devil on one side, angel
Yeah.
on the other, and you're
Yeah.
hearing both things. Is it worth my time to manage 10 booths, or is it better just to kind of put things on eBay, have my costs come at the sale as instead of before the sale? So these are all kind of things that we'll talk about in future shows, but
Yeah.
basically to run it down to the basics, my
Yeah.
goal is to pick a little bit stricter
Yeah.
and to be more efficient and less clutter around the area. If I think I do those 2 things
Yeah.
and focus on those, I think my 2024 is going to be a home run.
And
So
that's something we're going to talk about is how to do that or how we're trying to do that and what's worked and what hasn't in the
100%. So,
future episodes.
and I think too, I think we can, it's an evolution of ourselves,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think other resellers might like this podcast because they can relate to it. And it's something we all struggle with: death
Yeah.
piles,
Yeah.
no inventory, you know what I mean? Time sucks on certain things. So I think as we go through and we just kind of tell our journey, tell how we're evoluting ourselves. I
Yeah.
don't know, however you pronounce that, but our evolution, I think
Yeah.
other people can relate to that. So,
Yeah.
and my goal is to hopefully we can do a once a week podcast on this thing and get lots of subscribers. What do you think?
That sounds like a great goal to me too.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Scotty.
All right, buddy. So I guess we're just going to end it there. Anything you want to say before we go? Like
Any feedback's great. We appreciate that. Give us time to smooth things out. Just we're here to have a good time,
And in 6 months, we'll have hats, T-shirts, mugs, stickers.
Yeah,
and
we'll
all
sell
that
out.
kind
We'll
of-
sell out.
Well, maybe, who knows? But right
Okay.
now, we don't have that stuff. So, all
Sounds
right,
good.
Carl, awesome. Thanks
Thank you.
so much for being part of that with me. I know we both discussed it. It's not really anyone's one idea. It was just kind of something that we kind of merged into a thing. Unless you brought it up first, I don't know. But I'm glad that we met, and I'm glad that we're here doing this channel together. And I think it's a good thing. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
And we'll see you in 2024.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Know you've been a good friend, and that's in the thick and thin.